Training the Mind Like the Body. Part 1. An Introduction to Sports Psychology. Often in sports and performance, there's a stigma that mental health is not an important factor when compared to physical health. That is that the physical preparation an athlete goes through far outweighs the mental preparation and skills an athlete develops over a period of time. And the reality of the situation is that it's actually the opposite, where the mental skills help an athlete go through the day-to-day training needs. And so that is why mental health should be regarded just as important as physical health in the world of athletics and performance. And so in order to do that, we need to train the mind as if it were the body. And these kind of performances an athlete goes through can be extended to any kind of performance in day-to-day life. So that could be one's job, one's hobby, simply having a tough conversation with a loved one. We need mental strength and conditioning, similar to the body, in order to get through these tough moments in life, since often our greatest battles are those within our own mind. So that brings us to the history and origin of sports psychology. It all begins with the father of sports psychology, Coleman Griffith. He is often credited as the first person to apply psychological principles systematically in order to improve sports performance when he was first hired by the Chicago Cubs in 1938. His focus then was psychomotor skills, motor learning, and the connection between personality variables and physical performance. And though he was a trained psychologist, many of his colleagues did not find interest in his work. And so it was only until the 1950s and 80s where sports psychology started to become its own discipline and become separate from exercise physiology, motor learning, and motor control. And a lot of what we consider as kinesiology or exercise science, it finally became its own discipline, if you will. This brings us to the question, what is sports psychology? There are a lot of definitions regarding sports psychology that do not do the field justice, and so that is why I chose to use performance psychology rather, since it encompasses the full scope of what the discipline aims to do. And so the definition reads as follows. Performance psychology is the study and application of psychological principles of human performance to help people consistently perform in the upper range of their capabilities and more thoroughly enjoy the performance process. So you guys must be wondering, what does sports psychology encompass and some of the topics that are discussed. Here I list 5 of those topics. However, there are many, many more that sports psychologists analyze and go through with their athletes. So the first one that I have is motivation and goal setting. Sports psychologists use a framework known as SMART goals, which are basically specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic, and time-bound goals for the purpose of increasing motivation and confidence in an athlete throughout a season. Next is mental skills training, which we will go into far more depth in future videos. But two examples of this are going to be imagery and self-talk. Next is injury, which is basically sports psychologists and athletes working together in order to jump the hurdles of that injury impose onto an athlete. Next is leadership skills, and this is instilling leadership cues into athletes on a team and showing other athletes through example. And lastly is team cohesion, where sports psychologists will plan out certain activities that build team chemistry amongst athletes and iron out differences amongst teams. That brings us to the benefits of sports psychology training. Here we have many of the general benefits that NCAA Division I athletes reported to their athletic trainers after meeting with a sports psychologist. Many of these benefits work on an individual basis, so some individuals may feel only a few of these, whereas others may feel all of these benefits. And so the ones that will largely improve after this series of videos on mental skills training that will include imagery and self-talk, for example, are going to be managing anxiety, dealing with pressure, managing emotions, building confidence, enhancing performance, and increasing enjoyment. So now that we are on our last slide, I will be showing you some of the mental skills in action.
The first one, this is the last time out. He has played the entire game. He would have played the entire game in Game 6 if it wasn't a blowout.
So in the video, we have LeBron James utilizing these skills. These skills include imagery, relaxation strategies, and meditation in order to improve his confidence, control, concentration, and focus in order to win the game. And so what we can take away from this is that mental skills training is not some kind of fallacy, some kind of joke. These are skills that some of the top athletes of the world utilize in order to improve their game. And so, although we are not being watched by millions of others, we have our own games and performances that we need to do well in. And so, applying and extending these mental skills training into our everyday lives will be very beneficial and help us get through tough times and tribulations and adversity of life. And so that is why our mental health should be regarded as just as important as our physical health, since our mental health is going to get us through the day-to-day actions and responsibilities that we have to go through in life.